Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Lessons Learned in Supporting Your Constituent Cybersecurity Journey. The Pacific Northwest has been site for several pilot programs to help businesses comply with Department of Defense cybersecurity requirements, such as the Emerging Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification, or CMMC. Today's program is specifically designed for staff of MEPs, PTAC, economic development organizations, elected officials, and other organizations looking to support their constituent CMMC compliance to bolster industry and the competitiveness of the region's defense business cluster. I'm Kate Canapo with the Pacific Northwest Defense Coalition. PNDC's mission includes strengthening our members' business by bringing more defense and security contracts to the Pacific Northwest and supporting a strong and connected supply chain for these industries. And we've been very active in supporting this pilot program because we know that cybersecurity compliance is an important part of a strong and resilient supply chain. Joining me on the line today are Bailey Simpson and Denise Reiser. Please chat them if you have any questions. And look for Bailey's post. She'll be defining some of the acronyms that we're very likely to use on this event today. We'll try to keep it to a minimum. Bailey will also chat a link to the slide decks that we have today. We'll follow up. I think the one that's posted is missing a few, but we'll follow up after the event with some additional slides. Today we're going to review the pilot program, discuss some of the results, and look through a few case studies in this program, and talk about next steps that we can take on cybersecurity compliance for our constituents. But first, a very brief overview of CMMC. On the screen right now is a quote from Department of Defense. Really sums up that DoD is very serious about cybersecurity, and they are working with the defense supplier community, such as through community-based programs like this. You know, there is help, but in the near future, if you don't pass your CMMC audit, you will not be able to do business in the defense supply chain. Let's just pull up the next slide. Just a very brief overview of CMMC for those new to it. This is an evolving requirement. The Department of Defense has selected the CMMC Accreditation body to develop this program that will require audits at 5 levels of cybersecurity maturity. This is for all DoD suppliers, whether you're direct in the supply chain or direct selling to DoD or in the supply chain. And although the CMMC audit infrastructure is just in its beginning stage, the time to get compliant is now. It takes time, and many businesses have already self-attested to most of the CMMC requirements. If their contract includes a contract or flow down clause includes compliance with NIST 800-171 requirements. In addition, many buyers are being asked to submit a SPURS cybersecurity score that is evaluating some of these same building blocks of cybersecurity programs. So those of us in the support community, whether you're being asked about CMMC, SPURS score, NIST 800-171, this is all a cry for help with developing a holistic cybersecurity program. Great. Let me now introduce Jeff Lawrence with Impact Washington. Washington has managed this grant-funded pilot program and helped Pacific Northwest comply with the cybersecurity requirements, as well as made today's program possible. So Jeff, I'll let you take it away.
Great, thanks a lot, Kate. Thanks for the intro. And thanks everybody for attending this this wrap up of this grant, which we feel has been quite successful. PTAC Washington is the Washington State Center in the NIST Manufacturing MEP Network, the Manufacturing Extension Partnership Network, which has centers in all 50 states and in Puerto Rico, with the mission of focusing on small and medium-sized manufacturers to provide expert assistance, supporting and facilitating growth of small and medium-sized manufacturers and their success. And a big part of that in the defense industry and others is cybersecurity. And as one of our funding agencies, NIST is the keeper of the governmental standards for cybersecurity. It makes sense that there would be grants delivered through the MEP. This grant was received from the DoD Office of Local Defense Community Cooperation, formerly known as OEA, or Office of Economic Adjustment, to impact Washington through the Washington State Department of Commerce. The objectives or the goals are simply stated to strengthen the state's defense manufacturers' cybersecurity posture and compliance, and to prepare for the emerging CMMC standards and audit readiness for that standard. Although when this grant was designed, the CMMC was not a thing. It has emerged as the standard for compliance for the DoD, and so of course those involved with the defense supply chain are very interested in this. The intended outcomes are to generate awareness to all members of the DoD supply chain in Washington State, in addition to providing immediate benefit to companies through training and one-on-one support to select companies, and really very importantly, to understand the challenges that our members of the Washington State supply chain face in order to establish a framework of options for future support of companies within the DoD supply chain. There have been other DoD grants in other parts of the country. I think ours is a little bit unique. We have really attempted and I think been successful in integrating many strong partners. PNDC and Kate and her team have been very important in reaching out, not only in the state of Washington, but across the border to Oregon and Idaho, and we're expanding out because commerce doesn't stop at the state borders, and so we're hoping to be able to expand this to other MEP networks and to use some of our learnings to enable others to help supply their client base. So we've had very strong support from PNDC, PTAC. Tiffany Scroggs and her team have been extremely engaged. There's been a lot of referrals for companies, a lot of education done with those companies, and also one of the things that we did is we engaged members of the private sector in order to do the one-on-one support. We have 9 members of the private sector of what we call cybersecurity service providers. That's our name because they come from managed service companies that specialize in cybersecurity, ones that are specifically oriented towards cybersecurity. So those are we believe we have somewhat of a unique outline in this, and we hope to be able to tell you more about that. First of all, we're going to start off with Kate to talk about the awareness programming in the program.
Great, thanks, Jeff. Yeah, starting off undertaking this pilot program, we were really determined to meet the defense supply chain where they were at in their cybersecurity journey, not assuming what was needed and being really responsive as the needs evolved, as more awareness built around CMMC. The Pacific Northwest Defense Coalition, my organization, really served as the voice of the defense supply chain because we had so many members in that organization. So providing feedback along the way and really understanding at a granular level what was needed. Starting off, we reached out to over 3,400 members of the Washington State defense supply chain, as well as neighboring states, and educated them on what CMMC was. This was a new requirement, and really started there, what it was, and then asked what you need to do to be compliant. There were really three main themes we saw out of this. People were confused, they needed to understand. A lot of the education was focusing on why, but people were asking how to be compliant. And then we identified some really specific roadblocks and came up with step-by-step programs to overcome that. If you look at confusion, I think there was a lot of confusion around the old NIST 800-171 requirements. Sorry, not old. Somebody's going to correct me on that. But that was what DoD was requiring. And now what? They want us to do the CMMC. Well, really explaining that this was a continuation of what you've been working on all along. Little bit information about the timeline that it takes to be compliant. And I think a lot of the cybersecurity vendor community had very loud voices pushing technology, and we were really focused on that sound management part of cybersecurity. What are your policies? What do you have now? Really making it more manageable for people to have a resilient program versus throwing money at the problem. From why to how, the second column here, I think this attests to really that CMMC is working. Companies wanted to get compliant. They understood they must get compliant if they want to continue their DoD work. So they were asking how. And that was really a focus, is finding the right resources to help them start on this journey. I think one of the things that Jeff alluded to earlier, I like to use a healthcare analogy, is the companies, the cybersecurity service providers were like your general practitioner, your general medical provider. They really helped you get a holistic picture of what you needed, and not just start with surgery, if we're using the medical analogy, and throwing technology at it. This roadblocks to step-by-step, the roadblocks were fear of unknown cost, lack of focused staff time, no internal project manager, no impending or clear deadline from DoD. So really working with people to understand that. And I think the deadline really became a non-issue when the Department of Defense requested SPURS scores from everybody, the interim rule, a lot of people call that. So the deadline became a lot more clear. And we sought out really overcoming these roadblocks and starting with a clear plan to educate people more on what their requirements were, having them come up with their POEM and their system security plan as kind of some first steps. So Jeff, I'll turn it back to you to talk a little bit more about kind of the outcomes that we developed from this program.
Yeah, thanks a lot. First of all, just a couple more notes about the elements of the grant, what it included. Went through an evolutionary process in the grant design, execution design of the grant. We kicked this off in March of 2020, and that was, of course, right before lockdowns for COVID and so forth. The original grant design was to have done a series of in-person training courses across the state, 5 quite large in-person training courses across the state. And of course, that became pretty quickly evident that that wasn't going to be possible by the end of March. Kate and her team and others quickly jumped in and put together some webinars, which we started out with, and those were delivered in March, at the end of March, in April, and in August. And there was an increasing amount of interest in that. By August, we had over 200 participants in that. And so as the awareness grew, there were more and more folks who were interested in that. We also met with some of our subject matter experts and with some clients and with other MEPs and talked about, hey, is this the best way to do education, to do these large in-person or webinar training where there's a big data dump, and then in my view, and I think in a lot of the other ones who we're working with, they said, okay, people go back and say, yes, I know I need to do this, but wow, that's a lot of information. So where do I start? So, you know, one of the things that we talked about was that we ended up that perhaps a self-paced learning management system approach would complement what we were doing with the webinars and with the other training. And we put together, with the help of our partner Ignite, two self-paced training modules for CMMC that are free of cost to the state DoD supply chain and a very nominal cost to others outside the state. But so one is a senior management course, basically a general overview of the current standards and the emerging CMMC compliance requirements, and also a more detailed practitioner course, which has a lot of curated content, links, templates, and that kind of thing, so that theoretically a person, company would be able to watch this course and be able to chart a roadmap on their own, to use resources available to be able to go on that journey. So those were done, and then we I mentioned earlier in my introduction that we did some one-on-one cybersecurity support, and we were able to provide the grant design called for 19 companies to give the support to. We ended up doing 36. So I think that really one of the reasons was because of the design and because of bringing in these private partners I talked about before, these 9 private partners. We went through an RFP process where we outlined what our objectives were and we put that out. And of 14 respondents to that RFP, we selected 9 companies who we work with and who were assigned to these 36 members of the defense supply chain to do one-on-one support and to not only continue with the education, but to help them move up through a security gap analysis, creating a plan of action milestones, a POAM, develop a draft cybersecurity plan, and other assistance to prepare the companies for cybersecurity supply requirements, including the emerging CMMC assessment. So the outcomes were very, very top level. As I mentioned, what we did those training courses, we had 230 members of the defense supply chain in the state of Washington participate in those LNS courses. They're still available. We're still seeing signups. One-on-one support for clients, 36 clients in the state of Washington. Company size ranged from 2 to over 450. So it was a wide range, but the average size was 58 and a median of 27. So it was more skewed toward the smaller size. There was a lot more kind of confusion and not knowing where to get started on that end of the spectrum. The engagement amount from the cybersecurity service providers was anywhere from nearly $7,000 up to $36,000. Average of 16.5 and median of 12. The grant amounts, we wanted our clients to pay or to contribute at least 20% of the amount for them to be committed and have some skin in the game. The average grant amount was $8,900, nearly $9,000, which would be 55% of the engagement amount. Average engagement amount, and the median grant support was about $7,600, which is about 63%. And on the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about some of the outcomes, and actually in the next 2 slides. One of the outcomes that we were tracking, and this was an evolution because when we had designed it originally, the SPURS, the supplier performance risks system, while it may have been in existence, it wasn't really widely used. But this has, my understanding, I'm not an expert on cybersecurity, but this is becoming a standard that a lot of folks are looking at. So The outcomes are that there were significant improvements in the SPURS cybersecurity scores, and you can read these selected comments from clients, everywhere from hey, it's just good to have an expert on my side, to good to have outside eyes looking at it, to hey, we don't have to do this all ourselves. Small business and small manufacturing, small suppliers have a tremendous amount on their plates. There were multiple hats, and we know that these non-urgent things kind of take the back seat. And also coaching and patience. I mean, there's a lot of these things take a lot of time. You have to. It's a journey. It's just not a one-time fix. So on the next slide. Yeah, so our takeaways were that, throughout, there's a lot of evolution during this time. There was an awareness raised in cybersecurity experts that this is a market that hadn't really been approached. This smaller market, I think that the realm of cybersecurity companies and experts were to work with either larger companies or with governmental units. But there's a tremendous need in these smaller companies, these smaller private companies. And it was very refreshing that a lot of our cybersecurity providers we work with is very much of a team kind of an effort. It's like, okay, we understand this is a problem, we need to help. And our takeaway that Carol and Kate and I, who were the main team members on the design of the program, was that our cybersecurity providers are really eager to help develop creative, cost-effective solutions to serve this important growing market, because it isn't going away. It's only going to expand, and the needs are going to become more intense. So there's an expanding variety of assistance which is available. Just to kind of, we have a small sample size, of course, and we're not completely done with the analysis of the grant. But I think in general, for a cost of somewhere between, for a total project cost of between $7,000 and $15,000 and 150 man hours of staff time for small companies, say less than 80 employees starting on the CMMC journey, they can nominally increase their SPURS scores by about 100 points, draft an SSP and a POEM, and develop a solid pathway to the CMMC compliance. My opinion, and I think what has been recognized by a lot of those clients going through this training, is that it's good to have a relationship with a cybersecurity expert. This is a complicated area. It's changing. You have questions. It's like having an attorney that you can resource if you need that attorney. So we're hoping that these introductions and this information that we've gotten out there have developed those relationships, and they're on a path to be able to get compliant, but they have a resource or resources to be able to go to. And so at the MEP Impact Washington, we're trying to establish ourselves as hey, if you have questions, we have this great team now. We've got a team of vetted private companies. We've got all the ones who have helped us through this, PNDC, PTAC, Commerce, others. So instead of wondering where I should go for help, you can go to the MEP or any one of our partners, and we can work together to help those clients. And I turn it back over to you, Kate.
Great. Thanks so much, Jeff. Let me introduce Austin Totem Technologies. As Jeff mentioned, the cybersecurity service providers, our name for them as part of this grant, really innovated and provided programs that were repeatable, that could educate those small businesses as well as others on getting cybersecurity compliant. So I'm going to have Adam with Totem Technologies talk a little bit about their workshop model that they implemented. Adam, I'll let you take it away. I've got your slides up here.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. Just checking, make sure you can still hear me, Kate.
All
Excellent.
good.
All right, thanks, Kate. And yeah, I'm Adam Austin from Totem Technologies. I'm the cybersecurity lead. Just a little introduction to ourselves, and first, thanks to PNDC and Impact Washington and Jeff and his team. It was really a privilege to participate in this grant program for Impact Washington. We are Totem Technologies. We are a small business DoD prime contractor ourselves. We started in 2014. There's another entity called Haight Bay and Associates. Totem Technologies is an operating unit of that. Haight Bay is a minority veteran-owned small business, but we're a prime U.S. Air Force contractor. And we've been doing cybersecurity work on the Department of Defense side for over a decade now. So our team has a couple of decades worth of experience in DoD-related cybersecurity. And as a prime contractor, really a micro business, small business prime contractor, we can really empathize, especially with the small businesses that were the majority participants in this grant program. And we can not only empathize, but we can commiserate. There's a lot of pain involved in this, and for a small business just starting this journey. We ourselves have been on the journey for over 5 years now, so we have a little bit of experience to go along with that expertise that we can offer as part of this grant program. And because we're a small business, we emphasize the lower cost and free solutions, especially when it comes to technology. But then we also will emphasize the fact that we can supplement technology with training and empowerment in an organization, and help realize some cost savings there as well. So we are one of these small businesses in the program. A little bit of the grant package features. Yeah, you can go ahead, Kate. Appreciate it. Thanks. There's 3 main salient features to our workshop, what we call Cohort Offering as part of this grant program. The workshop itself, so that we start off these participants, organizations in the workshop. So access for up to 2 organizational participants in the workshop. And it's a 9-session series spread over 3 weeks. So it's not a deluge of information over the course of 1 or 2 days, like many workshops can be. It's spread out over time to give the participants time to digest, and it's hands-on. We give them access to a software as a service tool, a cloud-based tool that we purpose-built for small business cybersecurity compliance in the CMMC regime, really the paradigm. So they get access to that tool for a year. And then we also provide a couple of different channels that we can follow up with them over the course of that year. They can schedule one-on-one appointments with myself or another one of our cybersecurity experts to talk about ongoing implementation specific to their organization. Or if they're not quite sure, if they're still at the point where they don't know what they don't know, then we give access to the what we call Totem Town Hall, which is a question and answer session that we host monthly, and they can participate in that. And really what we've found, Kate, if you don't mind slipping a slide ahead, let me see here. We give plenty of free resources as part of this. Up front, it sort of expands upon that Ignite free training that Jeff had mentioned, the initial training. And go ahead, another slide, Kate. Including a free ebook. So your clients can email us info@totem.tech with the subject line free ebook that explains all this stuff. And then we'll follow up and expand upon that in the workshop. One more slide, Kate. Yeah, perfect. So most of the clients, and we've had hundreds of clients, about 20 of those were just under 20 of those were Impact Washington clients as part of this grant. And many of them sort of have their hair on fire. They're small businesses. They've been told by their prime contractor or further up the supply chain that they need to start work on this cybersecurity stuff in CMMC, generate an SBRS score. Otherwise, they are going to have the contract yanked, or the vendor, the prime, is no longer willing to go with them. So we have to approach this from a let's put that initial fire out, and you don't have to worry about right away buying technology. In fact, sorry, I'm just dismissing this little alarm here. Technology is less than half of the problem. Our approach is more from a quality management perspective. And so many of these clients have gone through like an ISO 9001 certification or AS 9100, and they have a quality program in place. And our approach is, let's expand upon those existing capabilities you already have in place. And you can see here from the first phase in what is ultimately a 3-phase compliance methodology. There's nothing about, it's only the 4th step in here before we even start talking about technology, hardware and software. The first steps are, let's wrap our head around business process. What type of federal government information is processed and how in the organization. Develop what we call a life cycle for that information. So we go through a life cycle determination exercise. And through that sort of crawl, walk, run approach, let's see what you already have in place as an organization. Let's expand upon that. We'll get you walking through this 3-phase methodology, and with some tools that we have, many of those tools free, eventually set you up to be able to run and pass the CMMC assessment when that assessment process and methodology is finalized by the Department of Defense. So I'm already over my 5 minutes here, Kate, but I just wanted to introduce that the methodology here and the fact that we have a different approach because we are a small business and we empathize with these folks, and it's not, we don't want to dive right into the deep end of the technology pool. Let's start by seeing what business processes are already in place and how we can expand upon them and coach these clients and these participants through that expansion of existing business process. So thanks for the opportunity to present about that. Really appreciate being part of the grant program. Looking forward to potential for more grant participation in the future. Thanks, Kate and Jeff.
Great. Thank you so much, Adam. Really appreciate that. We do have a little extra time. Does anybody have a question for Adam or Jeff? No? Great. Is Raj on the line? And I'm just checking the chats to see if anybody chatted it. Question here. Great.
I can certainly go on, Kate.
Adam, I know you can, and everything is so valuable. I think I think I'm going to add to our list of quotes that it's only 50% of it is technology. I think that is a common misunderstanding, and a lot of the delays gets thrown on the IT person's desk, and that's not the place to start. You know what? I think we're going to go ahead and skip ahead a little bit. I don't hear Raj Sindhu on the line, so I'm going to go ahead and skip through his slides. We do have one of our other participants on the line, Jack Myers with Luminate Digital Security. I know I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you have a comment on kind of some of the findings on the one-on-one, not through a cohort program, but the support that you offer to some of the clients?
Yeah, thanks for including us in this. I was just going to add to and sort of yes and a couple of things Jeff had mentioned about the awareness of the small business owner. It's very evident that most of them recognize they have to do something. There's a number of business owners now, after going through this program, that have a lot of clarity about how they need to proceed forward post the grant program and the initial assessments to help them build out the SSPs, the POAMs, and the other things that we work through with them. I would say that those that were part of this program have the benefit of working with some well-respected providers here in our region, but I think a number of other smaller companies that were not part of the grant program, in particular, some that just either one didn't qualify or couldn't make it in time. They're still struggling to figure out where to go and what to do. And I know we all raise our hands to be in these webinars. We raise our hands to kind of offer assistance and provide services. But to Adam's point, we're a small business as well, and our approach has been a crawl, walk, run approach from the get-go. 8 years ago when we started this across many different frameworks, not just CMMC but NIST back then, and we find anecdotally that even though there's tons of information out there, it's really about being able to sit across the table from the stakeholder and have that captive attention for them to understand it. Right now, it's just sort of flying around as what we often call as kind of a hot topic, but it doesn't actually have legs yet. It doesn't actually have inertia behind it to create and structure a formal program. And I think a lot of them are still looking at this from a, tell me what I need to buy so I could check the box to say yes, that I'm doing that. And that mentality, unfortunately, still exists pretty heavily in the customer base and the members. And so getting some thought process around this, we have a separate client that we worked with that is not even part of PNDC, and even their organization is starting to hear rumblings of CMMC as a universal standard. And so I think that's the one big takeaway, is that it really required us sitting down and getting stakeholder buy-in from the top, and that focused attention for it to be successful. And that's been reiterated over and over and over again. And I think the reality is we still have a lot of owners and C-levels out there that just haven't sat down and spent the time and talked through this with somebody of what does this mean? Because it's way beyond a CMMC. It's pricing, operations, culture, policies and procedures, how you do things. It changes the face of the business as they know it today. And I think that's the hardest part for them to digest, is how do I price this to cover my costs going forward? Some of those conversations are, CMMC is, yeah, you got to do it, but it's the other part of the business operationally that I think we've noticed a lot of guidance and conversations happening around. How do we sort of weave this into what we do? And so that was one of the, I think, probably the biggest takeaway that we had from this is, the mechanics of CMMC, but how does this impact my business, and what should I be doing today to prepare for these future costs? So
awesome. Yeah. Thank you, Jack, for
You're
letting
welcome.
me put you on the spot there.
That's okay.
No, Jeff Myers with Luminate Digital Security. Thank you so much for participating. And Raj, I understand you're on the line. We're going to be a little bit over time here, but if you want to give a quick overview of one of the companies that you helped with the grant pilot program.
Yeah, of course. My apologies. I had a child emergency that I had to deal with that was completely sidetracked me. So my apologies.
Oh, I hope everything's okay.
Yeah, we're okay. Okay, thank you, everyone. I would like to go over a quick story, quick case study of one of our clients that we've helped move through the CMMC journey. They're about a 15 employee company. They're manufacturing with a single site. And it took us about 4 months from start to finish, and by no means we're done. There's still more work to be done, and there's just the work will continue to be done. And what they had in their environment was 2 Windows servers that were fairly up to date. They were using Office 365 for email. They were using OneDrive to share data back and forth. They did not have any CUI or FCI, which was a huge plus for them, because they did not have to go through further compliance. The only issue was they had a lot of their infrastructure was out of date, older firewalls, older access points. So we ended up upgrading all of that really easily. Did cost them a little bit extra money, but it ended up working out really fast and made it very efficient. Would you scroll to the next one, please? Or how do I? Oh, there you go. So basically, we started off with getting together with them, creating policies, creating SOPs, and that was a interesting process that lasted for months. But once we had the policies, the skeleton of the policies down, it was fairly easy to then start creating the enforcement policies and start the governing process. But basically, we updated their infrastructure, like I mentioned earlier, and that was it ended up costing them a little bit more than they expected, but they needed to do it anyways. But we were able to replace all of their equipment with next generation equipment that's required by CMMC. Next, please. We essentially encrypted everything. So we started off with encrypting the servers, the workstations, all of their mobile devices. Email encryption is provided through Office 365, and backups in transit. So as systems were backing up, that's all encrypted, as well as at rest. So that as far as encryption goes, those were really the critical items that we wanted to capture immediately, and those were fairly easy with their small setup. Data classification is a task that's daunting at times, but it was fairly simple for them, because again, they did not really have much restricted data, but we ended up putting them into 3 different categories: public, private, and restricted, and then implemented least privilege policy, so that way any of the data that was tagged as restricted or classified as restricted or private would have those least privilege policies applied, so there was no accidental disclosure of information. We also implemented Azure AD with conditional access and access logging and no sharing of accounts. This is also, this is something that we come across in a lot of small business environments, where there's always folks sharing accounts, whether it's on your computer, so Active Directory accounts, or Dropbox or any other services. This is one of those items where there has to be a one-to-one relationship with a user and a system access. So there's no sharing of accounts. And since they were about 15 employees, this again was a fairly simple process. It did take us a while to go back and reiterate, reconfirm, and all of that. But changing habits, that was the hardest part. MFA essentially for everything. So we implemented some very inexpensive MFA options. So email was fully was using multi-factor authentication, and all administrative functions were using Duo for MFA, which is very inexpensive and very easy to set up. And then for all remote and VPN devices, we used a firewall technology that we're familiar with that is inexpensive, and it provides that MFA functionality out of the box.
Yeah. And Raj, you know what, we're a little over time, but I did want to maybe skip ahead to the cyber awareness and training and phishing campaigns.
Sure.
That's an important part that hasn't really been addressed.
Sure. So one of the things that is required by CMMC, and it should be a general practice for any business, is training and testing. So not only do you want your employees to be trained on good cyber hygiene and what is required, but you also want them to want to test them. So there's a couple of different ways to do that. We provide the training platform that then has a quiz that you have to pass that certifies you basically that that you know the material. And then we also include phishing campaigns as part of that the monthly process. So that way we're testing that the training that is provided around phishing is actually being understood. So that's crucial to have as part of your monthly plan.
Right. And I love this quote: it's progress, not perfection.
Yeah, you keep making progress. I know,
Yeah.
it can be daunting to take on CMMC, but just break it down into smaller chunks. Use the POAM. We have templates for all of that. If anybody's interested, I'm happy to provide that.
Right.
Again, my apologies. I did not account for an emergency happening in the middle of my presentation. So.
Yeah, no problem. Raj, thank you so much. Appreciate it. And I think this does give everyone on the line an overview of the purpose of this. These were different companies that supported, or different cybersecurity service providers that supported companies at different places in their cybersecurity journey that had different internal resources. Maybe you needed somebody that did all your technology and cybersecurity. Maybe you had some internal resources as an IT person that just needed the training on becoming more knowledgeable about cybersecurity. So to Jeff's point, that wasn't a one size fits all. We'll go through some of our favorite quotes here from It's Progress, Not Perfection. This really touched us. Alex Stanton with ex-Babylon really gave a great quote about this work will help the entire region leapfrog over other regions for that cybersecurity compliance. It's such an important part of being in the defense supply chain. It will be something that the region can tout as an expertise in a really low risk supply chain. This is another quote from Max Ignite Institute, that we were able to become kind of the center of truth for cybersecurity when there was a lot of noise about different technologies. This was a way to bring that all together. Great. Jeff, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, mainly that just again to reinforce that I think that there really is a willingness and an interest not only on the part of our public and our advocacy organizations such as PNDC to move this forward and PTAC, but the defense, but the cybersecurity suppliers understand that this is a huge need. It is really central to our security as a country, but also the individual security stance of these small companies. And so there's been a real collaboration on getting this, working together to come up with a different creative means and cost-effective means. And this is the thing which Carol and Kate and I have talked about quite a bit is it's kind of amazing over the course of a year how much this has evolved to a lot more solutions, a lot more opportunities for clients. And so I think that the collaboration will continue. We do have a really good group of partners here, and to see that collaboration continue is important.
Great segue. I'm going to invite Damon Nix, Director of Business Development with Impact Washington, to talk a little bit about next steps.
Yes, thank you, Kate. Greatly appreciate that. This topic today is really about lessons learned. And I'll tell you that one of the lessons that Impact Washington has definitely learned is the strength of the cybersecurity support community here in the Pacific Northwest is just outstanding. From our cybersecurity service providers, you heard from, amazing, Adam with Totem, Jack with Luminant Digital, and Raj with Intech, among a number of really outstanding cybersecurity service providers we have. The industry associations who are supporting this. Thank you, Kate and PNDC. And then our educational partners and really everyone that's here on this call as well, who represents our economic development community, the ecosystem, our industrial clients who are implementing. that's the strength of the community here. And so Impact Washington is committed to being a partner in supporting the Pacific Northwest industrial base and manufacturers compete with cybersecurity. And so we want to make sure we have the resources available to you to help get you connected and moving forward. And so I think the Louis Pasteur quote is, the chance favors the prepared. Our goal is to help you be prepared. We want to make sure you have those resources. So we're offering ongoing cybersecurity support. This program, the support from this amazing state of Washington DoD cyber program is sunsetting, but the support that we offer through Impact Washington will not. You can continue to come reach out for us. We're continuing to work to identify and expand the services that we have, and looking for new grant and other funding avenues to make sure this is affordable, particularly for small, medium-sized manufacturers. As I think it's been highlighted really well today, is there's a great need, and we have great providers who can help them get on the CMMC journey. So we encourage you, if you are a manufacturer or who's interested in ongoing or further cybersecurity support, or if you represent and among your constituency you have manufacturers, encourage you to point them to our registration site. It's an intake for us. If you register there, we can then have a conversation with you, determine if you're qualified for available grant sources, connect you with cybersecurity resource providers who can then help you take those further steps along the CMMC journey. Thank you to Ignite. Max, if you're on the line, shout out to you as well. Thank you for your support and their support for the training courses Jeff mentioned. We have these great training courses that are online. You can access through our site at impactwashington.org, or there's a link here you can see. Go directly from Ignite. Thank you to Ignite. They're going to continue to make those courses. We're going to allow those courses to be available beyond the grant period, to hopefully bridging into expanded training offerings in the future. Thank you for that. So check that out as well. We encourage you to register. Again, manufacturing clients, you have to register for those courses and learn more about CMMC. Another lesson we learned is that these are great events, and we want to continue that. So we're going to keep the momentum going. Look for a calendar invite. We're sort of targeting mid-July, but we want to continue to have these meetings, keep the cybersecurity community engaged, talking, sharing lessons learned, introducing new resources, grant opportunities, etc. So look forward to further collaboration and through PNDC and with Impact Washington and the rest of our partners in terms of community learning, webinars, engagements. So I think on the next slide, there's a great, just a basic contact information. Certainly, if you're interested in learning more about ongoing support, taking those next steps, we encourage you to reach out to us. As you said, there's on our impactwashington.org website, you can go to resources, fill out the cybersecurity interest registration form, and we'll get you connected, and we'll follow up, make sure we understand your needs, and then also get you connected to the resources of this great community. We also have an email, cyber@impactwashington.org, that you can submit queries to. So we're committed. We're looking to identify more resources. I think, as Jeff highlighted, our partners have made it really highly cost effective. I think as we went along, it's becoming more and more cost effective, and with the creativity of our cybersecurity resource providers, service providers. And so with grant funding that helps these things along, but we also have providers who are doing an amazing job of meeting small manufacturers where they are. So reach out to us, we'll help you get connected. So thank you for being a part of this community. So thanks.
Right. Thank you, Damon. Does anybody have any questions? I invite you to unmute. We've got a lot of resources on the line. Right, everybody overwhelmed, I think. A lot of information here, but I think the takeaway is that CMMC is working, the community is getting more compliant, and there is help available to get them from where they are now to where they need to be compliant. Is that a good summary, everyone? It's not impossible, though it can seem that way at the beginning, right? Larry, did you have a question?
Yeah, just a quick question. I'm not sure who exactly I should ask the question to, but you know, I've attended a number of these. The emphasis usually is on process, procedures, getting attitudes adjusted, you know, kind of an administrative, a lot more to it than that, but kind of an administrative bent with maybe some software. Today, one of the gentlemen made a comment that kind of, and it totally makes sense, but that's the hardware piece. And so I was kind of curious, hardware upgrades required to become CMMC certified. Any guesses of how much of the total cost that's going to be?
That really depends on your environment. The hardware upgrade requirements, you know, whether they're network related or server or workstation, whether you need, you know, your current hardware will allow you to encrypt. That's usually something that we come across. So it all completely depends on your environment as far as the hardware goes. We have, in the smaller businesses, we have been in where we haven't really had to upgrade a lot of hardware because their hardware had the capability of doing everything that was needed. But it really depends on your situation. If you haven't upgraded in the last 5 years, chances are you will need to upgrade.
Yeah. And that's where I think the cybersecurity guides, the cybersecurity service providers have been a great resource, is helping people not just throw technology at the problem or replacing something that could work with the right structure, right?
Yeah. If you don't mind, Kate, I'll add a little bit to that. Our sister company, Convergence Networks, works with a number of the manufacturers here in Oregon and Washington. And Larry, just ballparks that we've seen, smaller companies spending somewhere between 10 and 15,000 on stuff that they just have let sit and have not upgraded. Some of the bigger companies we've seen, they've had to make investments of $60,000 to $100,000 into new infrastructure on top of changing their software licenses with Microsoft, on top of changing which versions of those licenses they have, how they've distributed them. It's a pretty you have to kind of look at it holistically and sort of unpack the layers of what's hardware, what's in the building, what's in the cloud, where are my staff working from, and then how do I manage all of that? Because the big piece of this is not just on your core hardware, it's also on then whether you have to implement a SOC or a SIM product, which is an unknown expense, whether you have to implement a vendor management system, which may have a structure to it, whether you implement Ignite as your learning management platform for managing all your compliance. So those costs begin to kind of rubber band back and forth depending on what your business is going to do and how you're going to justify to the auditors what your position is for implementing something or not implementing something. And that's a lot of getting the auditor's perspective into that and having a certified professional who can walk you through those different options. But some of the stuff is just brass tacks, like we have to do this to run, right? And we need to do this to be even meet the expectations that are required. So we've seen a number of ranges.
Yeah, thanks, Jack. Insightful. I mean, again, you've got companies that, you know, could pass CMMC now, and you've got companies that can spell it. So, you know, within that kind of range, having some estimates is helpful. Because again, I mean, that's the immediate part of the discussion is, okay, great, I understand I got to do it. How much is it cost me?
Yeah.
And again, that's from a minimum to a gold-plated standard to somewhere in between, and what do they want to pay for? What can they pay for? And again, that's the piece that's missing, is kind of that ballparkish stuff to give companies an idea of what it's going to cost them at the end of this.
Yeah.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you so much, Larry. Appreciate your question there. I know we're just right up about time, so I'm going to invite people. I pulled up the contact information. Obviously, you can reach out to Cyber kate@impactwashington.org. My email address is kate@pndc.us, which will magically appear in the chat at any moment. So I encourage you to reach out to us. We're happy to answer any more questions. We will send out a survey tomorrow, and we'd really like your input on what information you'd like to see, what resources you'd like to see, as well as we'll send a copy of the slide deck. If you do want to download your chat, you can do so by just going to where you would type in a chat. There'll be 3 little dots, click on that, and it'll allow you to save your personal chats. I know we've typed in some links and some acronyms, etc. in there. So a big thank you to the team at Impact Washington and all our cybersecurity service providers for making all this progress. It's been a quick year on this, but we've made a lot of progress and made a big impact on the cybersecurity of the Washington defense supply chain. So thank you. Jeff, do you have any parting words?
No, thank you so much. This has been a great project, and if anyone from Commerce is there, thank you so much for your collaboration. And without the DoD grant, we wouldn't have been able to get as far as we went. So we're deeply appreciative of that.
Awesome. Great. Well, that concludes today's webinar. Do look for a follow-up email from us tomorrow.